Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're going to cover the final chapter of the book, Automate the Boring Stuff with Python. And this is going to be an exciting topic because we're going to learn how we can automatically move the mouse and operate the keyboard using automation. So specifically we are going to learn about graphical user interface automation and basically about how we can fully control our computer through a program. To follow along, you can head over to automatetheboringstuff.com and there you can find the entire chapter of this book, or if you prefer a physical copy of the book, you'll find a link in the description down below. Now, so far we've been working with various Python modules which helped us to do specific tasks, for example send out email or modify Excel spreadsheets, but we were always constrained to the specific use cases. Now we're going to learn a way how we can really control our mouse of our computer and also the keyboard, and then we can basically operate any program and make any kind of change that we'd like. For that kind of automation, we are going to use the PyAutoGUI module, and we can use that on both Windows and Mac. On Windows, it's very straightforward. We simply install it, and we're going to take a look at that in a moment. On Mac OS, we need to take a couple of more steps. So here we need to make sure that we issue all three of these commands. And then we also need to adjust the accessibility settings on the Mac OS. So we would have to head over to our system settings and basically allow our editor that we're using, for example Mu or the terminal, to control our computer. So that's two additional steps that you need to take if you're working on Mac OS. On Windows it's quite straightforward. We simply open our Mu code editor and then, as before, we click on the gear icon on the bottom right side. Then we head over to the tab third-party packages, and here in that list we are going to add PyAutoGUI. And then as soon as we click on OK, the installation process is going to start and we are installing that module. Now, one important thing to note before we actually get into writing some code: when we use this kind of automation to handle the graphical user interface, there can be some edge cases that we need to be aware of. So for instance, when we give our script control of our mouse and keyboard, then of course some things could happen that are unanticipated and it could get a little bit out of control. And to avoid that, we should already know how we can abort our program if anything goes wrong. And the easiest way to stop our program is to shut it down. So on Windows we would press Ctrl, Alt and Delete, and that allows us to switch over to the task manager and then to cancel the program. And if you're using Mac OS instead, then you would press Command Shift Option Q, and that is going to lock you out of the program. So when you do this, you're going to lose any unsaved work, but at least you can end the program and avoid any unintended consequences. With that disclaimer out of the way, let's get into how we can actually control our mouse. And for that, we need to understand how the mouse coordinates are calculated by the PyAutoGUI module that we are using. So that module is using the X and Y coordinates to locate the mouse cursor. And here we can see on the top left side, we have the origin point. That means on the very top left side of our screen, we have the X coordinate of 0 and the Y coordinate 0. And then the further we go over to the right, the more the X value increases, and the further we go down to the bottom, the more the Y value increases. So in this example here, we have the maximum value on the bottom right side. So in this case, 1919 pixels on the X coordinate on the width and a height of 1079 pixels. And of course, what the pixel value here is depends on the resolution of your screen. And to figure out our resolution in code, let's head over to our Mu code editor. We're going to activate the REPL, and then we start out by importing our module. And then we can call the size function, which is part of our module, to get back the width and height of our screen. This is going to be a tuple, and we are storing that in our variable WH. Now let's have a look at that by typing in WH, and this is my resolution right now, so a width of 2560 pixels and a height of 1440 pixels. And again, the values could be different for you depending on what kind of resolution you're using. If you want to address the width or the height individually, we could either do that by indexing it. So here we have our variable WH, and I'm going to display the value at index 0, so that would be the width. Or alternatively, we can also address that attribute here by just typing in wh.width, and that's going to give us back the same value. Now let's start out moving our mouse cursor. So we're going to use a for loop to move our mouse cursor 10 times, and we are using the move to method to actually move our mouse cursor to specific coordinates. So in this case here, we are moving it to the position 100 in terms of the x value and the position 100 in terms of the y coordinate. So if you think back about how the coordinate system works, then we know that the origin is on the top left side at position 0, 0. That means from the very top left side, we would move 100 pixels to the right and then 100 pixels down. And so we can actually see the change. We are then also providing the duration, so it should take 0.25 seconds to do this. After that, we are going to move our mouse cursor over to x position 200, so 100 pixels more to the right. And again, that's going to take 0.25 seconds. And after that, we are going to move to the position 200, 200, so 100 pixels down. And then finally, we're going to move to position 100, 200, so that means we're moving to the left. So effectively, in the first step, we are going to set our mouse cursor to be somewhere over here. Then we are moving to the right, to the bottom, to the left, and then the loop starts all over again. So we're going to do that a total of 10 times. So let's run that and see if it works. And here we can see our cursor moving, so I'm not moving it myself right now, but this is what our program does. And then after the for loop stops executing in just a moment, right now, basically I can move my cursor freely again, but everything else was controlled by this automation. Now, rather than using the move to method as we just saw, we can also do a relative movement starting from the current cursor position, and for that we would use the move method. So the move method doesn't specify specific coordinates that we're going to start from, as we saw with the move to method. Instead, we are going to start with the current cursor position, and then we are going to move the x and y coordinates relative to the current position. So here, for instance, we're going to move 100 pixels to the right from the current position, then 100 pixels down, 100 pixels to the left, so a negative x value, and then 100 pixels up, which is a negative y value. So let's put our cursor somewhere over here, and let's see if that works properly. So here we can see, again, we have our for loop with the 10 iterations, and now we basically have the same square as before, but we are starting from the current mouse position, so therefore we have this kind of movement here. Now, one aspect that can be very useful when we write our own programs using this kind of automation is to figure out where our mouse cursor actually is. And for that we simply call position, which is part of the module, and that's going to give us back the current cursor position. So if I move my cursor over here and I confirm, then we can see I'm currently at position 201 in terms of the x coordinate and 1053 in terms of the y value. But if I move my cursor, let's say over here on the top right side, and I run the command again, now we can see we have the updated x and y coordinates. Of course, the x coordinate is far larger now, and the y coordinate is lower because, again, we are further to the right and further up on our screen. Of course, we can also store the value we got back in a variable, for example, called p. And then as we take a look at that value, again, we're going to get that specific value where our cursor is at the moment. And as before, we could then reference only the x or y coordinate if we wanted to. So for example, when I type in p.x, I'm going to get the x value. And when I type in p.y, I'm going to get back only the y value. And that, of course, can be very useful when we want to use it as part of a program. Now, of course, we can not only move our mouse cursor, but we can also click our mouse using a command. And let's say, for example, we want to open a new tab here in the Mu code editor. And for that, we're going to click on that icon here on the new icon. Just to make sure that we actually click the right one, I'm going to get the position of the mouse cursor here. And as we just learned, we can simply call position on our module to do that. So here you can see we are at position 190, 102. And now to perform a click, we simply use the click method here, which is also part of the module, of course, and we pass the x and y coordinates to that method. So here I just simply wrote out the x coordinate and y coordinate that we just inferred. So if that works properly, then we should actually open a new tab here. And that was rather quick, but we can see the mouse cursor moved over there and we have a new tab displayed here. So it basically instantly moves over and performs a click. We can not just click the mouse, but also drag the mouse. And to show an example of that, we are going to open a drawing application such as MS Paint. And here, of course, we can drag the mouse and then paint something. And we're going to use a program to draw something. Specifically, we want to draw a spiral. And for that, we're going to create a new program. We need to import both the PyAutoGUI module and also the time module. And to give us some time to actually switch into that drawing application, so that can be MS Paint under Windows or something like Paintbrush under Mac. And so with this 5-second delay, we have some time to switch into that application. Then we're first going to click at that particular point, and we are defining a distance and also a change variable. And then while this distance variable 300 is greater than 0, we're going to use the drag method, which is part of our PyAutoGUI module. And we pass the distance as an argument to it, so initially 300. And this is going to be the x value. We have a y value of 0, and we have a 0.2 second delay. Now we are decreasing the distance by the number of the change. So in this case, it's going to be changed to 280. And then we are dragging downwards by that amount by keeping the x value fixed and passing the change distance value to it. And again, we have a duration of 0.2 seconds. Then we're going to drag to the left by passing a negative x value, negative distance value to it. We are decreasing the value of distance again, and then we are going to drag upwards by passing a negative y value to it. So let's have a look at that, and we're going to run the program and then directly switch into the application. I'm going to place the cursor here, and then when the 5 seconds are up, it's going to start drawing. And we can see we draw such a spiral here. And we can see that the value is always decreased. So distance is decreased until here we reach the point where distance is equal to 0. And of course we could also scroll our mouse. For that we would import again the module, and then we can use the scroll method and pass a value to it. So in this case a value of 200, and then that's going to scroll our mouse. So if we place it over here and we run the command, we can see that we scroll downwards here by 200 pixels. Now, one of the challenges when we are writing a program that is using this kind of GUI application is to find the correct x and y coordinates of the things that we'd like to click. And for that, PyAutoGUI provides a helpful info screen, so we can see all the information about the mouse cursor. And to work with that, we can call the mouse info method, which again is part of the PyAutoGUI module. And if we run that, then we can see this kind of window opens, and here we can see the x and y position and also the color of the item where we are hovering over. And we have the option to simply identify a specific location. Then we can copy those coordinates, and that can make it a little bit easier to really find the right position of the mouse cursor and then copy that information and use it as part of a script. Now our automation program doesn't have to click and type blindly. There's an option to create a screenshot of the current screen. And then we have the option to analyze the screenshot and identify some elements. And that can be really helpful if you want to click a specific item. So to get a screenshot, we can of course first import our module again. And then we can use the screenshot method to generate a new screenshot. And we are going to store it in this variable im. And this im variable will then contain the image object of the screenshot. So let's say, for example, our GUI automation program should click a gray button. But before we actually call the click method and click that button, we can check whether the color of the button is actually the color of the gray button that we expect. Because of course there might be some kind of pop-up or something opening on top of the button we want to actually click at. And using the screenshot image, we can then analyze the colors and see if the colors actually match. And if they don't, then of course we are going to abort the execution of our program. Now we can get the color of a certain pixel by using the pixel method. We then pass the x and y coordinate to the pixel method, and this is going to give us back the color as an RGB value. So if we pass a value of 0 and 0 to pixel, we get this RGB value back, so that would be the color white because the top left pixel here is white. But if we change that to 50 and 200, so moving over a little bit like this, we get actually a different RGB value, 0, 0, 0. In this case, we have the black color. Now, in order to check whether that pixel has the same color as the color that we expect, we can take the pixel matches color method, and we pass our coordinates, so 50 and 200 to it as before. And then we pass an extra tuple to it, which contains the RGB values that we expect. So in this case, it would be the color black. And if we run the program, we can see we get back true because the color at this position actually matches this color. But if we change this, let's say we take the color green here, then we would get false. And we can use that to check whether the button that we want to click in our program, for instance, has the same color as we would expect. Now when we're working in applications, typically we have a number of different windows open and we need to make sure that we work on the correct window. And for that we can get the active window that we're currently on. And to get that we have to use the getActiveWindow method. And we get this active window and store it in a variable. If we have a look at that variable, we get the specific window object back. Now to get some more information, we can pass that object to the string method. And this is going to give us back some more information, for instance, the width and height of that window, and also the title of the application we're currently in. We can then address individual attributes, for example, only the title, to get that attribute back. And we can get back, for example, the left and top coordinates, as well as the right and bottom coordinates. And if we run that, we're going to get back those particular pixel locations. And then of course we could use these coordinates to do some calculations. So maybe we want to click on the top left side, but we're going to add 10 pixels to it. And this is where we're going to click. And in this case here, this is going to open the menu for us. Now while getActiveWindow is very useful to get the currently active window, there are also some other ways to obtain windows. So for example, we could call getAllWindows to get a list of all the window objects that are visible on the screen. Or we can, for example, use the getWindowsAdd method that returns a list of window objects at the specified point that we pass to it. Now we can also manipulate windows and, for example, resize or move windows. We can use the getActiveWindow method to get the active window. And then we can, for example, get the width of the window or the top left coordinate. We can also check if the current window is maximized, which is the case for this application here. We can also use PyAutoGUI to control our keyboard. So as an example, we can use a method to write a text, for instance here to Notepad. So we have the Notepad application open, and in the background here we have our Mu code editor. Now if you want to write something to a specific location, we can first click onto that location. So here we are clicking at position 100, 200, so 100 pixels to the right and 200 pixels down. And then we are going to use the write method to write some text. So here we're going to write hello world. And this should actually write some text here to our notepad because that's at that location. So let's confirm this command. And as we can see, now we clicked onto this area here and we enter this text. Now instead of passing a single string argument to the write method, we can also pass individual keyboard keys. So for instance here we have a list of different keyboard keys, the letter A, the letter B, but we can also reference the left and the right arrow, and of course also capital characters. And here's a quick overview of the different keys available to us. So for instance we could type out enter, which is the enter key, ESC for the escape key, and we can even reference the F keys on our keyboard. We can even use hotkey combinations, for example to copy and paste some text. For that we would use the key down or the key up method, and this way we can chain certain actions together. So here for example we are passing the control and the CK to the hotkey method, and this allows us to copy some text. Okay guys, let's have a look at a project, and we are going to work on filling out a form automatically. We are going to fill out a form with a lot of data, and specifically if we want to fill out multiple forms to submit data, then we can save a lot of time by automating those steps. Specifically, we are going to fill out this form. We have a name field that we're going to fill out. We are going to submit the greatest fear, which is also a text field. We are going to select some wizard power that we have in here. Then below that we have a couple of different radio buttons where we can have a selection between 1 and 5, and then we can provide an additional comment. And once we click on submit, there's going to be a different page where we can decide to start a new form. And we could use this approach to, for example, fill out our form with hundreds of different entries. We're just going to demonstrate it here with 4 different entries. So we are going to fill out the form 4 times. At a high level, what we want to do is we want to click on the first text field in the form. We want to navigate to it. Then we want to move through the form and type out the information for each field. We want to click the submit button, and then we want to repeat the process with the next set of data, meaning we are going to click on a link to open a new empty form and then continue working with it. And specifically we are going to use the click method to click the form, and also the submit button to use the write method to enter text. Now let's switch over to our Mu code editor and let's write our program. So we first need the PyAutoGUI module that we've been using so far. That of course is required in order to actually navigate our form and fill out the data. Because it takes a little time to actually load the form in the different fields, and we also want to know what's going on, we're also going to import the time module in order to not fill out the data instantly, but have a little bit of a delay. After that, we have our form data. So these are actually the fields that we want to submit. And as you can see, we have a list here with a number of different dictionaries, and each dictionary contains one data set. So here, for instance, we have the first entry with the name Alice, the field eavesdropping, the source is want, Robocop is set to 4, and then we have a comment here, tell Bob I said hi. And in a similar way, we have 3 more dictionaries with different names and different data fields. So this is the data we want to submit. Then we also decide to pause the execution for half a second, and we also print a message here to the screen to ensure that the browser window is active and the form is loaded. Because when we start our program, we instantly want to switch over to the form so that we can properly navigate that form and fill out the information. We're then going to loop over each entry in our form data list, which we have up here. And for each person in the entry, so for each dictionary, we start out by first giving the user a 5-second pause. So that's the time we are going to need to switch over to that form. So we're using the sleep method here as part of the time module to pause the execution for 5 seconds. And then the first step we're going to take is we are going to use the write method to use some tabs to navigate to the first entry point. Just to show that quickly, when we navigate over to this form and we press tab, we actually need to press it 4 times to get to the first field, to get to the name field. Once we are there, we're then going to use the write method to write out the person's name, and then we are pressing tab again, which gets us to the next field, and then we are entering the person's sphere, we are pressing tab again, and at that point we add this drop-down field here. So here we need to select the corresponding entry. And depending on which option we select, we have to of course navigate to that. So for the first entry here, the want entry, that's the one at the very top. So here we just need to select this field, go down once and confirm. And if you want to go down further, for example to money, then of course we have to press the down key a couple more times. And this is covered by these different if and elif statements. After that, we need to fill out the Robocop field, and that is the radio button field. We need to press the right key to navigate to the proper entry. So here we can see if we press the right key, we navigate to the respective entry, and then we can switch to the next entry. And then the final field is just the additional comments field, again a text field, where we're going to enter some entry, and then we're going to click the submit button. So this is covered by this code. Here, first of all, we are entering the comment, we're pressing tab, then we are pausing the execution for half a second, and then we press enter again, and finally we then submitted the form here. So this is what we do by this method here. We pause for 5 seconds. That gives us enough time to load the next screen, which allows us to submit another response link. And you're going to see that in a second, but here we are just going to press tab to focus the link, and then we press enter, and that allows us to load the new form. And then basically we start the entire procedure again for the next person in our form data, and we are going to do that until we filled out the entire data set here. Alright, with that in place, let's actually run our program here. And now we have 5 seconds to switch over to the form. And now in a couple seconds it should start. Here we can see we fill out the information. All of that happens automatically. We make the selection, we add the comments, we click the submit button, and now we can see here we have another link to submit another response, and that is being filled out. And of course then we start the entire procedure again. We have the 5-second delay. Now we have the next field. Here's the data for Bob, and this basically keeps on going until we filled out all the data fields. And of course we are showing it here for only 4 entries, but you can imagine that if there are a lot more entries, maybe 100 entries, then this would just keep on going. We could probably also reduce the pause that we have, so 5 seconds is rather long. Of course it depends a little bit on the internet connection, but we could probably reduce it to, let's say, 3 seconds to save a little bit of time. And we have the last entries here, and then basically we are done with the execution, and we submitted a couple of entries here. And of course this could be adjusted to be run on any page. We could, as long as the format of the page doesn't change, use those options to navigate the page, to enter the entries, and then to perform some actions. Alright, let's continue with some practice questions. First one is, how can you trigger PyAutoGUI's failsafe to stop a program? To do that, we can move the mouse to the upper left corner of the screen, so to the origin, which is the coordinate 0, 0. What function returns the current resolution? Now to get the resolution we can use a size method, and this is going to give us back a tuple with two integers. We have the width here and the height, and that represents the resolution of our screen. What function returns the coordinates for the mouse cursor's current position? So for that we would use the position method, which of course is also part of our PyAutoGUI module. So as I move the cursor here, for example, to the top right side, and I press enter, we get a high x value and a relatively low y value, because the further we are to the right, the higher the x value, and the further up we are, the lower the y value. What is the difference between the move to and the move function? So the move to function moves us to absolute coordinates. For example, we could pass in an x value of 500 and a y value of 300, and we are going to move to precisely that position. On the other hand, the move value is a relative movement. So depending on where we have our cursor, we are going to move a certain number of pixels on the x and y axis, but it's always relative to the starting position of the mouse cursor. What functions can be used to drag the mouse? So we have two functions available to us for that. We have the drag to method that we can use, similar to the move to method that would move us to an absolute position. And then we have the drag method, which is relative to the current starting position. What function call will type out the characters of hello world? So for that we would use the typewrite or alternatively the write method, and we pass the string, so in our case hello world, to it, which will be typed out. How can you do key presses for special keys such as the keyboard's left arrow key? So for that we can use the write method and then pass a list to it, for example with pressing the left key and then the right key. Alternatively we can also use the press method and then pass a single string to it. How can you save the current contents of the screen to an image file named screenshot.png? For that we would use this screenshot method, and we pass the name of the screenshot as an argument to our method. So for example screenshot.png. What code would set a 2-second pause after every PyAutoGUI function call? So for that we would use pause and then set that equal to the amount of seconds that we want to pause. If you want to automate clicks and keystrokes inside a web browser, should you use PyAutoGUI or Selenium? So for that, Selenium web browser is a better option because it's developed specifically to be used with web browsers. What makes PyAutoGUI error prone? PyAutoGUI clicks and types pretty blindly, and it cannot really figure out if there's anything changing. So for instance, if there's a pop-up appearing, for instance, or if the right windows are focused. So therefore, errors can happen. How can you find the size of every window on the screen that includes the text Notepad in its title? For that we would use the getWindowsWithTitle method, and we pass the name as an argument to it, so in our case Notepad. And finally, how can you make, say, the Firefox browser active and in front of every other window on the screen? Now for that we would first get the Firefox window by using the getWindowsWithTitle method and passing Firefox to it, and then we can store that in a variable and call activate on it. This was the last video in this series. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a like down below and feel free to subscribe to the channel. If you want to learn more Python, there's a separate series covering Python Crash Course, which is a very popular Python book, and also a series on learning Python the hard way. Thanks so much for watching, and see you guys in the next video.